Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Corona Daily Q&A with ER Dr. Larry Burchett, that's me. And today, Adele, hello. Adele Tevlin is joining us. She is a cognitive behavioral therapist. That's CBT. CBT?
CBT, not CBD.
I know, I just said CBT, who specializes in coaching CEOs. You're in Toronto. Terrell.
I'm in Toronto, Canada. I'm your neighbor to the north.
Adele, it's so great to have you on the show. We've been wanting to do this for a while. I'm so excited.
Yeah. And unfortunately, it took this opportunity, but maybe not so unfortunately. So I'm glad to be here with you too. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, fortunately and unfortunately, that's kind of one of the topics that we're going to talk about today. Before you dive into that, I think your stuff is so good, and
Thank you.
I am personally, for myself, getting through this, excited to hear what you're going to say, because you do this with CEOs all day. Tell me a little bit about your training. You have a master's, and tell me a little bit about that.
So I have a lot of diplomas on my wall, as my parents said. I went to McGill University in Montreal, neuroscience background, a Bachelor of Science in Neuroscience. I've been extensively trained in cognitive behavioral therapy from the Beck Institute in Philadelphia. I'm currently enrolled for my master's program at Harvard in my second year for the Master's of more like human behavior. Basically, and I've done a lot of other, NLP training. I've basically for the last 20 years been, I'm an avid learner. I would say I'm a lifelong learner. And I've been, more importantly, obsessed with human behavior, human potential, transformation, resilience. Like why do some people thrive, right, in this type of environment versus other people sink? So for me, and I've been working with CEOs on Bay Street in Toronto for 15, 20 years now. So, it's interesting because I was saying, I feel as though I have been training my entire life for this moment,
Wow.
Because this is the work that's needed in the world. This is the work, right? If you can't grasp how to use your mind as a tool, if you can't understand that your mindset is everything, then you do see right now what I see even with my CEO clients or the leadership teams I work with. There are people, it's like a fork in the road. People are thriving or people are sinking. It's like the top 25 or the bottom. It polarizes people so much right now.
Wow.
And I always say to people, do you want to be in the top 25 or do you want to be in the bottom? It's truly a choice. And we can talk more about that because I love talking about the mind, the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, how our mind makes decisions, like how what we attend to and focus on expands, how to use CBT and different tools to really help you navigate uncertain times and thrive in this environment, seeing the opportunity.
I love all of that. I'm just so excited for this entire topic of neuroscience and behavior, and I love your credibility and how legit all of that is. You just talked about this right there, the 25% that thrive versus everybody else who doesn't in this time.
Yeah.
Compare and contrast that for me now in this Corona time. How do we thrive?
Yeah. Okay, so here's the thing. So I think when we're in times of crisis and adversity, so what happens is our limbic system, everybody's limbic system's on overdrive. We're hearing the news change every 24 hours. I also want to really say before I get into this that I think being in Canada versus the US, there's quite a difference in terms of, I think, the energy around it all, just because of the number of cases and all that stuff.
That's not to say not as many cases. You're not as freaked out in Canada as we are, maybe?
I don't think we're as freaked out. I think our numbers are lower. That's not to say, though, that, Toronto's been warned, like you're trending towards New York if we're not careful. I think Canadians, this is a whole other conversation. I think Canadians tend to be a little bit like obedient, like people are like, okay, self-isolate, sounds good. Please, thank you, sorry, that kind of thing. So I think there's less in Toronto. I can speak for. It's not as in our face, okay, but that doesn't mean that we're not worried. Yeah. And I also don't want to discount the actual legitimate things that are going on in the world. Like there are people dying, there are people that are sick. There's a lot going on. But when I say the top 25 versus the bottom 25, what happens is when you look at the top 25, those are people who are more resilient. And we'll talk about what is resilience, but they're people that are focusing on what is the opportunity here? How can I get creative and resourceful in a time where there's crisis? It doesn't mean we all don't feel the crisis. The limbic systems are going crazy. I call that reaction. So a lot of people are reacting to what's happening around them. The bottom 25 are the people that are focusing on the negative news. They're watching the news like 24/7. They're looking at the problems. Okay. So this is a very key concept. The mind, the subconscious mind, is deductive in nature. So what that means, it doesn't actually care what you feed it, but it does amplify what you feed it. So for example, you have two people. You have one person that watches the news 24/7 and is tracking the data and is like thinking about the deaths. And so that person is going to amplify negative emotions because when you see, when you watch negative news and you get a heightened sense of arousal, but that arousal is more geared towards a negative emotion like anxiety, you're then having like a psychological and physiological connection, and you're amplifying that, and you're looking for evidence to amplify the negative because your reticular activating system is the part of your brain that scans for evidence to match what you have in your subconscious process. So if you're just looking at the negative news, all you see is negativity. Then you got someone else over here, let's call that like myself, because I'm really trained myself, right? I don't watch the news. It doesn't mean I'm not informed. I look at World Health Organization. I go on a few sites that are credible, but I don't look at the data and watch it and commiserate. I actually say, okay, I'm going to start to look at searching and scanning for the opportunity. First of all, for the opportunity, how can I be of service at this time? What are the skills I have that can help people? So it doesn't mean that I don't have moments of feeling, sad. But I say to people when people are like, oh, I feel so sorry for the people here and focusing, it's like, but feeling sorry for them doesn't do anything. Yeah. If you want to do something and help somebody, that's different. So when you say the top 25 versus the bottom 25, I would say that the people that are in the top are people that have cultivated resilience as a skill in general, and they're also attending to the positive information or the opportunity. The people that are sad and kind of in this victim, like life is happening to me, they're scanning for the negative information to match their belief system.
That's incredible. I have there's so many things that I want to get in there about. Like, I'm curious, how do you stay informed without getting caught up in exactly what you just said, a clickbait, almost really just attention grabbing, a lot of fear headlines. Today I just did a question and answer segment for ABC in Sacramento, like this. I have to read some of this news to stay up on this stuff, but I have also done what you described, which is gone down that rabbit hole and just on and on and on and on and on, and ended up like so fight or flighty, where I'm just like, you think a bear was chasing me around the house, I'm so like worked up, and it's like, that is not healthy, bro. So it's like, how can I stay informed and minimize that living in that stress response, because it's going to kill me.
Okay, so I'm going to deconstruct that in a couple different ways. I want to start with a couple things you've said. So it's this idea of staying informed. So I would argue that watching the news is not staying informed. It's actually someone's interpretation of the information, and it's usually biased, and there's a lot of rhetoric. Okay, so there's a lot of interpretation. So I would actually question, is that staying informed, or is that feeding the beast of the ego? Is that feeding the fear-based amygdala? Because staying informed is saying, I'm going to go on the World Health Organization, I'm going to talk to the front, I'm going to actually get the source from the source. When you watch the news and when you watch all these things, it's amplified. It scares you because it's someone's interpretation of it. Yeah. So part of it is, where are you getting your information? And staying informed so you can make good decisions is important. Now, the second thing I was going to say is, when you're in a fear response, and we can talk more about this because I want to draw some diagrams for you, but when we're in our fight or flight, this is very important. When you're in the limbic system and you're in survival mode, okay, so you know what I'm talking about, like you're surviving, like you said, you feel like a bear is chasing you, you are not using your frontal lobe. You are not able to make good decisions from a place of fear. So people, when they're in fear, they make fear-based decisions, which are usually reactive. So someone like yourself who has to stay informed, but also has to make really good decisions, more than anything, it's almost like you have to learn this mastery of the mindset piece, because it's like being able to take that information to use it for good, as opposed to get into this vicious cycle. Because like we talked about, emotions in psychology, we call it the upward spiral effect. Mm-hmm. Positive emotions, positive behaviors, mm-hmm. Negative emotions, negative behaviors, downward spiral. You're never in status quo. So people are often like, oh, like I want business as usual. It's like, there is no business as usual. You're either moving up or you're moving down. Energy is flowing up or flowing down. It's not staying neutral. So that's why I say to people, you really have two choices right now, because it's so polarized. You're either feeding the beast of the ego, or you're feeding the beast of, I call it your higher self, or your higher consciousness, or your decision making, your positive mindset. Yeah. So that's kind of my take on what you just said there. But I also want to draw a couple diagrams for you to actually really point to.
We're going to get to the whiteboard.
We're going to get to the whiteboard, because I'm visual and I think people are visual, and I think I want to draw the cognitive model in CBT so people can really place themselves where they are and see the vicious cycle that they're catching themselves in, and I want to help you break through that. Okay?
That was my next question. How do we go toward our higher self and not the downward spiral? Let's go to the whiteboard, Adele.
This is my home office with my whiteboard. I love it. Okay, so I'm tailoring this to match the environment of Corona, COVID-19. So this heightened sense of the environment. Okay. The second thing I'm going to say is that I think the people that are going to be able to thrive in this opportunity and build resilience. So resilience is actually how you buffer against stressors. It doesn't mean you're not going to have stressors. It's how you buffer the stress. Okay. Sure. So, and I'll talk a little bit about resilience factors as well. But the people that are able to buffer resilience are also the people that are able to say, I'm going to accept this as the reality right now. A lot of people are resisting the reality. They're like, we're not in this. They're in magical thinking, or they're in deflection, or they're in some other, that is not healthy either. They're in denial. I was going to say denial or magical thinking, like, oh, this is going to change tomorrow. It's like, first of all, this isn't changing tomorrow, but also I don't think it's ever going to go back to what it was. We're evolving as humanity. So that's like saying, like, I wish we went back to the 1950s. Like, it's just not happening. So the people that are more easily adaptable and able to say, okay, if this is the current reality and this reality is going to happen for the next 3-4 months, how do I thrive and adapt to that as quick as possible? Okay. So let's start with up here. So this is in CBT. We call this the cognitive model. I'm drawing this for you. So it's how your mental model, we call it your schema, is organized. Everybody has the same schema, like the same mental model. Okay.
Adele, can you move the camera a little more and center what you're writing? I want to make sure. Yeah, I want to make sure our guys at home get a good picture of that. Okay, good.
Okay. So this is called your environment or the situation. Okay.
Okay.
So right now, your environment that you're in is, we are dealing with, let's call it the virus. Okay. Let's just call it the virus, and that's what we're dealing with. The virus.
We're dealing with the virus. Corona season.
We are. We're dealing with the virus emotionally, energetically, cognitively, behaviorally. Like the virus, we hear about it 24/7. So we have this situation. Now, this situation, if you're watching this at home too, you might want to draw this for yourself, because you're going to take yourself through this. This situation.
I'm making notes and writing questions as you're talking. I don't want you to think I'm not paying attention. I'm like, there's things I want to ask you that I know I'm going to forget. Okay. Sorry. Back to your environment.
Okay. So the current environment causes thoughts. Okay. So, by the way, this is not just with Corona. My point is that every cognitive model starts with a situation that's triggering us. This situation that's triggering us happens to be Corona. Okay. This situation causes thoughts. Okay. So I went through this workshop with a client the other day, but I also did it in a webinar. So I'm going to give some examples of what people were actually coming up with. So I said, what are some thoughts that you have in your mind right now based on this situation? So someone said, I'm not going to survive this. Okay. And there are business owners that like, my business isn't going to survive. I'm not going to survive. So they had this thought, I'm not going to survive.
I can imagine so many people, especially small business owners, are afraid of that. Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah. I think that's why I want to give examples that people can really like. I want you to really pull this in like you're using it, in your own mind, like bring this into your example. But this is a good example. So they have this thought, I'm not going to survive. This thought causes certain feelings and emotions. So for most people, so for this person, I said, well, what is that? How does that thought make you feel? And this person said, well, I feel anxious. I feel hopeless, and I feel overwhelmed. I'm sure people can relate to those feelings. And then that feeling causes an action or a behavior. So again, I'm also emphasizing the word cause, and I'll get back to that in a second too. Causes actions or behaviors. So I said to this person, what is that causing you to do? And this person said, well, procrastinate, avoid, basically dig my head in the sand, which then reinforces that I'm not going to survive this. So this produces
I don't like
same.
that cycle.
Well, I want people to place themselves that this is the same result, and we call this the vicious cycle. So first of all, I want people to really get that they're in some kind of vicious cycle for the most part.
That thing makes total sense.
Does that make sense? So you got the environment causes the thought causes the emotion drives the behavior always reinforces the thought, okay? And so then you're basically in this confirmation bias of like, well, you're right, I'm doomed. I mean, or if you're not a procrastinator, maybe you're going into overdrive. So I had another client the other day who's like, well, I just working 24/7. But here's the thing about that. What is the feeling causing the behavior? If it's fear, if you're taking an action based on fear, it's not the right action. So that's actually really important to understand.
You said what is the feeling causing the behavior? And if it's fear-based, then that's always going to be inferior to being in a better state, acting from a more empowering emotional state.
100%. Because if you're driven from fear, then so we call this the law of cause and effect. So I bring in a lot of like these universal laws because it's really important here. And I have one of my favorite books, and I have it in my bedroom. I wanted to actually bring it, but one of my favorite books was written by James Allen, and it's called As a Man Thinketh. And it was written like 100 years ago. Okay, you would love this book, but it's the best book.
The first thing I wrote down on my phone was, what books does she recommend? I have to ask her about that. Perfect timing. So wait a minute.
I'll show you my library.
No, you're not going to show me all of them. I only want like less than 5, but some good stuff, including neuroscience. This one's called what? By who?
It's called As a Man Thinketh, and it's written by James Allen, and it was written 100 years ago. And he's, this is back in like same time as Napoleon Hill. So this is the best book on the law of cause and effect, which we'll talk about, and personal responsibility, because that's the next chart I'm going to draw. So cause and effect states that the law of cause and effect. We learned this in science when we were in, grade 10. Every action causes equal and opposed reaction. You put something out, this is the law. It's a physics.
Newton's law of motion is what that is.
It is, but otherwise known, the law of cause and effect. So this is really important because this is key. I want people to like highlight and asterisk this. The law of cause and effect starts at the level of your thinking. So you propel action based on your thought. So when you have a thought that is, I can't do this, or I'm not going to survive, or I'm not good enough, I don't have what it takes, she has it, I don't have it, whatever that negative, we call that an automatic thought. We also call it a core belief in CBT. If you have a core belief that's like, you can't do it, and then that behavior leads to an emotion, and that emotion drives the behavior, the cause and effect is that caused that action. So it's never the right action. Okay.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So you got to get that. So if cause and effect is saying that cause starts at the level of your thinking. So everything starts at the level of a thought. So even if so think about anything you've ever done or you've created, it started with a thought, which started with an idea, which all that kind of stuff. So when people are in this vicious cycle, the key to understand is they're always bringing in the same result over and over again. So results look like how much money you're making, or your health, or something tangible in the 3-dimensional world. Like that's your result. Okay, so I'm gonna take this off for a second. So now,
Love the whiteboard.
I know, me too. My son loves it too.
You're the first guest that's brought this kind of a prop. Outstanding.
I am a nerd and I love it. Or maybe it's a geek, whatever. Okay, so look. So let's keep this idea of cause and effect in the background. So every action has an equal and opposed reaction.
Okay.
And you are cause. Cause starts at the level of your thinking. We call that first cause. First cause is your thoughts predict your behavior. Okay. Now, so now we're going to draw a secondary circle. Let's call this what you aspire, how you want to actually create a different result. So let's actually think about, for these people that are watching, what's a result in your life that you keep getting over and over again that you don't want to have anymore?
Okay. I've got
maybe one. Yeah. Okay, great. So now I say to people, okay, so every change and transformation starts at the level of taking personal responsibility. If you don't take personal responsibility, you'll never transform anything. You have to actually say to yourself, okay, if the law of cause and effect is true, like an axiom of truth, a universal truth, like the law of gravity, you don't have to believe in gravity to not be flying off your seat. The law of cause and effect is the same. So when I bring in universal laws, I talk about it from a mathematical quantum physics perspective, like it's math. 2 + 2 = 4. Okay? You can't argue math. You can argue science, but you can't argue math. So if you say, I'm going to take personal responsibility and say, I've caused everything in my life, that gives you the ability to say, I also get to choose my thoughts, because human beings who have a frontal lobe, we have a critical thinking conscious mind. The difference between us and animals is that we can choose our thinking. So I would say, okay, great. So let's choose a more resourceful thought. So the original thought was, I can't survive this, or I won't survive this. And I said to this client, okay, what would be a more resourceful thought for you to think about right now? If you could just choose any thought. And this person said, well, I could choose that there's a lot of opportunity right now. There's opportunity. Okay? That thought then causes a more productive feeling. This person said it made them feel more hopeful, which then causes a more resourceful action, which then creates, we call this the creative outcome. Because I said to this person, what are you more likely to do if you feel hopeful?
Adele, can you turn your camera a little bit? Show us the whiteboard. Mm-hmm. There we go. So
if you take personal responsibility and you say, I'm responsible for my mindset. I'm responsible for the way I've been thinking. I'm responsible for everything I've created in my life, the good, the bad, the ugly. Nobody out there.
I mean, like, it sounds easy when you're drawing on the board, but the truth is, what I feel holding me back when I say, oh, I'm responsible for everything, is then there's some guilt that comes up. There's all emotions that come up about, well, my current state of X, Y, and Z is my fault, and it's hard to be wrong, or whatever. And it's not that I don't disagree with that, but this is the sticking point.
So you're so right. So here's the thing. I always say, personal development, it's not for the faint of heart, because you do have to accept responsibility for the stuff in your life that you've created that you don't like. But when you finally move past that and you say, okay, this is the point. If I've caused everything in my life, including things I don't like, that means I can cause whatever it is that I want. So it starts with responsibility and choosing a more resourceful thought. So it could be that, there's opportunity here, which is true. There's a lot of opportunity here right now, which causes an emotion like hope, or maybe this other person said, I feel excitement for the first time in a long time, which then produces a different action. So maybe that person is going to go and start to call old clients, or reach out to patients, or to put something out there on something I did is put a free training out there for people based on like my skill, or what are the things that I can do that's going to get me in a more positive momentum based on this thought that is more of an opportunity. So this is like, you're either in that cycle, the one I did before, the vicious cycle, or you're in this creative outcome. It doesn't mean that you're not going to deal with feelings of guilt or oh shit. But once you move past that and you say, okay, like I'm going to understand that I've created both the good and the bad, you ask yourself, where do I want to be? Because this is actually really important. This is really important, actually, because I'm talking, yeah.
I was going to say, give me some other examples of resourceful thoughts, comparing and
Mm-hmm.
contrast like non-resourceful versus resourceful that people are probably unconsciously just.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well, actually, let's look at the fear-based thoughts. It's very simple. I'll give you some examples, but you think about it this way. I always say to people, and we'll do this meditation too at the end, because I want people to be able to start to think about their thinking, because most people don't think about their thinking. But do you ever notice how you're going through life and everything's hunky-dory and all of a sudden you have a dip in your mood, or all of a sudden your affect changes? Okay, so I say to people, why'd your affect change? Affect's another word for mood. And they'll say, I don't know. I said, well, what were you thinking about? I don't know. Okay, well, if you did know. Well, I was thinking about that I can't pay the bills, or shit, I owe this for the this. It's always a thought that's unresourceful, means it's negative, okay, that causes your dip in emotion. Because your thoughts always predict your feelings and emotions, which always predict your behavior.
Thought, feeling, action. That's
Yeah.
always how that
Always.
sequence goes.
Always.
Causal sequence.
Causal sequence, exactly. So, unresourceful thoughts are, I can't survive this. I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I'm going under. The business won't survive. Like, I'm going to get sick. Someone I know is going to die. Like, oh, the poor doctor's on this, or, oh, this. Like, it's all these negative or low vibration thoughts. Okay. Resourceful thoughts are, I want to, like, there's opportunity here. What can I do? Or like, I can do something to help, or I can provide some value, or I want to be of service. So they're literally very polarized ways of looking at the same thing.
I can grow during this time. There's a lot of things that I can learn. Oh, I have to be at home. Oh, I could read. I could do what there's.
Yeah, I can grow. I can support. I can be of service.
I can help. I can contribute.
Yeah, I can help. I can contribute. I can
Good
make
things
masks.
are going to come out of this.
Good things. Here's the thing. We don't have to go far, but you look back in history, after every crisis, the best inventions came forward. You can go back to history books, like in times of strife, crisis. This is unprecedented times. We've never had any of this in human history. We don't have a rubric for it. But this is my point. Those top 25% of people who are seeing the opportunity, some of the best inventions, some of the best cures, some of the best things are going to emerge from this time, because it catapults people into, I'm either going to thrive or I'm going to be the bottom 25, like Darwin's theory of evolution. Like, I'm either going to sink or I'm going to fucking rise to the occasion. Yeah. Pardon my French, but it's true. Because I'm seeing it even in my network of entrepreneurs and other therapists. Like, I'm seeing the people that are showing up like leaders. They're not talking about being leaders. They just are leading.
They're just doing it.
They're just doing. And then I'm seeing the people that are trolling on Facebook and putting negative stuff out on social media, with tanking everybody's mood. And I'm like, okay, like, you're literally polarizing yourself. My choice is, I want to be of service. I want to contribute. I want to help in the way I can. I'm going to glean and see the opportunity. I'm going to stay positive. I'm going to teach my son that, resilience is a skill that you learn by virtue of your way of being, by virtue of your mindset, by virtue of mastering, for me, Larry, like, I have had to delete myself from a lot of Facebook groups and trains of emails that were negative. I'm like, this is of no service to me. Your interpretation of this is of no value to me. It's just rhetoric.
Especially if stuff takes you down, tries to take you down with it.
And then it's like, how am I going to be of service to my clients who lean on me if I'm down?
Yeah.
So same with you. It's like, you're a leader. You're on the front line. It's your absolute birthright, and it's necessary for you to keep your mindset high. It doesn't mean that we don't have feelings of sadness for what's going on in the world. But let me ask you this. How is you being sad contributing in a positive way to what's going on?
One of the questions I had for you right along that line was, I think especially a lot of us men tend to not pay attention to our feelings and listen to them. And so I do want to give like for me, I do want to allow some of the emotion that I'm having and not like stuff it down, whether it's my own fear or
Yeah.
anxiety or whatever about this thing. But um, so I'm curious, how do you, on the one hand, still choose more empowering thoughts,
Yeah.
but not just be in total denial about the reality of my inner emotional state? I guess I'm a little confused how to
It's a
sort that
great
out.
question. Such a good
That
question.
makes sense.
So, yes, it totally does. And that's where when we go through the meditation, I'm actually going to give you that experience of that. And so the answer to that is the following. If you don't allow, and this is not just for men, human beings, whatever you suppress emotionally gets expressed. It's like subconsciously.
It's
So
going to come out
if
sometime.
well, it usually comes out in getting sick in some certain way. Okay.
Yeah.
So my point in saying that is that we have to allow ourselves to feel what we feel fully, the sadness, the grief, the upset. If you allow yourself to feel that emotion, which is just energy in motion, like the law of transmutation of energy says that energy is always flowing and emotions are just energy. Okay. So if you allow yourself to feel it, that emotion eventually goes up the scale. So like there's an emotional scale. There's low vibration emotions like guilt and shame and fear.
I know them well.
And then there's high vibration emotions like love, gratitude, and joy. Again, this is not esoteric. This is actually measured in something called hertz. This is physics.
No kidding.
Yeah. So love, gratitude, and joy, those are about 15,000 hertz, something like that.
What are we measuring? Vibration of
The,
what?
the frequency of the emotion. This is the frequency of the emotion.
What's the instrument that's measuring that? I don't know what that means.
Well, when they put like electrodes on people's brains, they've figured out how to measure the frequency of different emotions. Okay,
Like
and
brain waves or something?
brain waves, exactly. And people were feeling feelings of love, joy, and gratitude. The frequency was very high. Okay, I think it's like 15,000 or 20,000 hertz. Feelings of guilt, shame, and fear are like 200 hertz.
Oh, wow.
So just to give you the idea of how low that is.
Low frequency.
So when you're feeling sad, if you allow yourself to just feel it, eventually the emotion moves up the pole here. But when you don't allow it and you suppress it, it stays down here.
Okay, so this,
So when I
I was going to say this I understand, but if I'm getting confused going back to choosing resourceful versus unresourceful. I don't want to stay in the guilt, shame, whatever. I want to allow it and move through it. But how do I do that? I'm confused.
How do you move through it?
Like, I feel like listening to your first thing, I could just be like, oh, I'm going to be positive all the time. I'm just going to choose positive thoughts. And like somebody dies and I'm like, oh, this is great. And da-da-da-da-da. And it's like, no, that's not how that works.
Yeah. So you're kind of talking about two different things. So this isn't about choosing positive thoughts. This is not like just positive psychology. This is about saying, if I'm constantly in the same result, I'm in a vicious cycle. So I have a certain thought that leads to a certain emotion, which leads to the action. If you want to shift the behavior in CBT, we say you got to start to choose a more resourceful thought. We call it a balanced thought. So we actually want to start to look at things from a more optimistic view, because optimism builds resilience. Okay. But it doesn't mean, so those are two different things in saying, if you are feeling guilt and sadness and fear, you do have to allow yourself to process and feel those things so you can start to move up the energetic scale here. Okay. So they're kind of like two separate constructs.
Okay.
Okay. So let's do this meditation, because I actually think that that's going to solidify what I'm saying in your mind.
Okay. Cool.
Does that make sense, that you're kind of saying there's kind of two different things going on? So the idea of positive thinking is important, but it doesn't mean that it's magical thinking. It doesn't mean that you're saying someone dies and you're like, this is amazing. That's not the right thought to that either. But it's saying to yourself, look, I'm either in a positive upward spiral or a negative. Choose. You can't be in both.
I think if someone dies, you still have choices on thoughts. I'm going to celebrate all the good. I'm so thankful for all of this, whatever, as opposed to, this is the worst. I'm never going to get through this. Oh my God, life sucks. All these big core negative beliefs come out, but you still process the sadness and the
Of
loss and
course.
all of that.
So you've got to get exactly what you just said. The same thing happens. So someone dies, God forbid. And you've got someone who says, celebration of life, that person lived a beautiful life. So they're in the love, the vibration of love, like the energy of love from an emotional perspective. Or you've got someone that goes into victim, which goes into the fear. Now, it's not one is better than the other. It just, they both lead to different results. And it doesn't mean you're not going to sometimes go into fear, but then how do you move from fear over here? How do you deal with, like you said, acceptance? Or how do you deal with looking at things from a different vantage point? That's really what you got to teach people, is that this is all happening inside their head and they get the ability to choose. You are not the victim of your circumstances. By the law of cause and effect, you've caused it. So you get to change it. You get to be cause in order to see something from a different perspective. This gives people hope. It gives them personal agency. It gives them internal locus of control as an external locus of control, which is most people right now who feel external locus of control, the government's bad, Trump's like this and Trudeau's like this. It's like they're just in that self-fulfilling prophecy, feeling like a victim. So they're not taking personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you don't take personal responsibility, you stay a victim. It's just two sides of the same coin. You cannot be thriving if you're in fear. You cannot be creative when you're in fear. Your amygdala's in control. You can't be feeding the higher self when you're feeding the ego. All the same thing to say, all different things that mean the same thing. Okay. So it doesn't mean that there aren't moments where you're going to be like grieving the loss of something.
Yeah.
But then your ability to move from that to a more resourceful state as quickly as possible is what builds resilience.
No, it makes sense. And I like how you taking us through this ultimately is very empowering, how to choose more resourceful thoughts, as you say, contrasting really from as opposed to staying in a victim mentality cycle.
Totally.
Yeah.
And you can think about a lot of people in your life who choose to be the victim because they sort of feel like if they don't have to take responsibility, then they don't have to own that they've created their life. Yeah. And I said this to you, like, there are a lot of people that will be triggered by that, but that's okay. That's okay. If it's good. If you're triggered, that means it's getting somewhere in your subconscious. Like if you're triggered, it means it's the truth. And I say to people,
there's part of you that's like, hey,
if I say, exactly. And like I say to people all the time, like my clients laugh because they're just like, you have this way of you have this way of being firm, but with love, because I want to interrupt those patterns in your mind. I want to interrupt those victim thought patterns. Because guess what? If you stay in the victim consciousness of it all, you're just going to stay sick and things aren't going to change. Like you're not going to move forward.
You're screwed.
So my goal with people is to have them see, look, like there's this other side to that. Where do you want to locate yourself right now? Because you're either over here or over here.
And choosing those resourceful beliefs is a great way to do that.
Choosing resourceful thoughts, choosing thoughts that are going to inspire a different behavior. Because here's the thing. You got to get that this is actually really important. Your thoughts are stored, your patterns and habits and thoughts are stored in your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is part of your autonomic nervous system. It's the part of you that allows you to breathe and digest without having to think about it. So your patterns are stored in the subconscious. The subconscious mind tells your brain how to think. This is very key. The how you think about the world is based on your subconscious mind.
Yeah.
That was stored, that happened when you were very young, 0 to 7 years of age. It's a whole other workshop I do that in theta wave state, when you're 0 to 7, you learn a lot of things from your parents, and that becomes your belief system.
That's called theta wave state?
Theta wave.
Theta wave state.
Yeah.
Got all this brainwave stuff you're talking about. I'm like, I need to know more about that neuroscience.
I love this stuff. So 0 to 7 is when your subconscious mind is the only part of your mind that's formed. You don't have a conscious mind until after 7. Your conscious mind develops after 7. Why that's important is theta wave state is the same wavelength as hypnosis. So your mom and dad, you saw things both consciously and subconsciously, and you made agreements about yourself and the world. So what's important about that is the subconscious mind tells you how to think. When I say how, I mean worst case scenario, generalizing, hypochondriac, anxiety, depression, or glass half full, glass half empty. The how you think about the world is in your subconscious. And this is important. Coronavirus or not, your how you think is exact same. If you're a worst case scenario thinker in life, right now it's just getting amplified.
Yeah, I bet.
If you're someone that sees the glass half full, because you're how you think, that was developed very early on in life. So it's really important to understand that you need to learn how to change the how you think about the world. The conscious mind tells you what you think.
I'm getting a little overwhelmed at feeling like I need to fix a whole lot of shit. I love the explanation, but I feel like the list of things that I'm gonna like try to be a mechanic in my brainwaves after this thing is getting long.
No, listen, you got to get that there's nothing wrong with any one of us. Like, I do really think that this is just a part of our humanity. But you just have to understand that you just want to start to notice, like, how do you think about the world? Are you someone that looks for evidence for the negative, or are you someone that's more positive? This is the key. We know about the neuroscience of the mind, that the mind has plasticity. We can change the way we organize our thinking. We can change our patterns. We can change the way we think about the world. That's the work that I do, is I help you change the subconscious programming that's keeping you stuck. It's all malleable. It's not fixed. That's my point.
That's what I want to hear after, after you start talking about this childhood thing. I'm like, oh, I'm so screwed. Like, there's a lot of good things. I feel like there's a lot of good things that came out of that for me. Yeah. That's just what going through my mind as you're talking about. But then I'm like, but it all happened in childhood. It's like moving mountains to.
No, it's
like,
actually.
Can you
really
hypnotize me and let's hypnotize some healthy, resourceful stuff, and then away I'll go.
Well, it's not, yeah, we don't have to hypnotize you, but it is, changing the subconscious patterning happens with repetition over time, so there's a way to reprogram those beliefs. My point in saying this, that's a whole other thing. We don't have to get into that, but I just wanted to highlight there that the how you think about the world is kind of like the way you move through life, and the environment that we're in right now is just amplifying that which you already are. But people are using that as an excuse, like, oh, Corona. And I said to every client of mine in the last 2 weeks, you didn't need Corona. That was your vicious cycle 6 months ago too. Trust me. And they're like, yeah, you're right. It's just more amplified. So I say this because I want to give people this understanding that you do not have to be a victim. You have not lost all control. Because guess what? You were never able to control the government. You were never able to control the market. Those are things that were never in your control. But what you can control is your mindset, your thoughts, your beliefs, your emotions, your behavior. That's always in your control. Yeah. So this gives people this idea of agency. And agency and responsibility is what we need in humanity right now. Instead of saying the government is bad and blaming all the things out there, can you imagine what would happen if everyone went inward and said, how am I contributing to my life, the dysfunction or what's not working? How am I in control of that? What can I do to be of service?
Yeah, what can I do in my local community and in my relationships with my people to get through this thing? And
what can I do? Totally. Okay, so let's meditate. Ready?
Yeah, let me turn I want to, everybody at home, I'm going to turn my light off here because I want it off while I do a little, there we go.
I want to give this as a gift to all of our listeners. And my invitation is don't be driving or operating heavy machinery when I tell you to close your eyes.
Good. That's absolutely. Adele, as we start this, where can people find out more about you and potentially work with you and all that kind of stuff? How can they connect with you?
Amazing. So they can find me on my Instagram, which is Adele_wellness. They can find me on my website, theceoblueprint.co. Or they can always email me at Adele Wellness. And I guess we'll link this in the show notes for them too, maybe so that they can see this.
Okay.
If they didn't get that. Okay, great. I can add that to you. But yeah, Instagram is always easy, Adele_wellness. I check that a lot. Okay, great.
I'm ready.
Okay. So whoever's watching this, of course, we want to make sure we're somewhere we can get comfortable and really take these next few moments. And you can close your eyes as I talk. Just take these next few moments to really think about going inward and really giving this as a gift to yourself. I focus on mindfulness practices with people because getting present to your breath and the generous present moment of now is so critical in times of heightened stress and anxiety, because anxiety is really just the fear of the future. It's a negative prediction about the future. And most of our suffering happens in some past or some unpredictable future. But in this present, generous moment of now, as we sit here together and breathe and attend to our breath, it's pure potential and pure possibility in the moment. So as we quiet our mind and start to focus on our breath, it allows our creative energy to come through. It allows us to give ourselves a break from the day, from the world. So you just want to start to notice your breath in the room today. How have you arrived? Is your breath labored or does it feel smooth? And you just want to really notice the breath and bring some extra breath to the area in the belly and around the heart. In times of heightened stress, whether it's your own stress or the collective stress, we want to bring some more energy to the belly and the heart. So you want to bring some breath. And you just want to feel your body in the room, your back fully supported by the chair that you're sitting in or the bed you're lying in. And we're going to just slowly scan the body, starting from the top of our head, down the forehead and the eyes, the nose, the cheeks and the mouth, the chin, the neck, the shoulders, the chest, the abdomen, the back, the glutes and hamstrings, quads, calves, ankles, feet, and toes. Just noticing in the body where you might feel the most tension and bringing some breath and presence to those areas in the body that need it most. Good. And now I just want to invite in this idea of fear and what everyone is experiencing at the level of the collective. And allow yourself here to fully feel the full range of emotions that accompanies the experience you've had in the last 2-3 weeks. The fear and the uncertainty, the doubt, but perhaps the hope, the faith, the inspiration. Allow yourself to feel fully the full range of emotions from a place of unconditional love, compassion, and non-judgment. Noticing your feelings like waves in the ocean or clouds in the sky, not attaching to them, just allowing them to be present. When we allow our emotions to move through us, they pass. But what we suppress gets expressed. So in this moment, just allow yourself to feel fully. Bringing deep breaths into the belly, focusing on the parasympathetic nervous system, dropping into that space of calm. And now ask yourself, what am I really afraid of? What's been coming up for me? What's been triggered? Maybe it's I'm not safe, which has been coming up a lot for people. Maybe it's I'm not good enough, or I don't have what it takes, or I won't survive this. I'm scared. When's this going to end? And just allow yourself to notice all the ways that that's been running your life for the last few weeks. And just recognizing that those thoughts are part of your fear-based conditioning, your amygdala, your survival mode. They're not the truth of who you really are. The pure potential that we are as human beings. And as we move into this next phase, I'm going to be repeating some affirmations that you'll repeat in your own mind softly and quietly to yourself, or you just listen to the sound of my voice. I am safe and loved no matter what. I am whole, perfect, and complete as I am. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in this moment. And everything is always working out perfectly for me. Bringing some breath into the belly, repeating again, I am safe and loved no matter what. I am whole, perfect, and complete as I am. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be in this moment. And everything is always working out perfectly for me. Because it is. The truth is that whatever is happening in the world is happening for our highest evolution as a society, as consciousness, as humanity, that you're supposed to be where in this moment, the present moment of now. And just slowly and gently bringing the awareness back to your body in the room you're sitting in, feeling your back supported by the chair or the bed. Bringing some awareness to the area around the heart and amplifying the feeling in your heart of love and gratitude, perhaps thinking about something or someone that brings you joy for a few moments. And as you bring love, joy, and gratitude in the heart, those high vibration emotions, maybe send some love out in the world to someone that you think needs it, and perhaps someone that you don't know that needs it. And then slowly and gently bringing the awareness back to the breath, the life force in the body. Reminding you that in this moment, you're okay, you're safe, you're alive, you're well. And slowly and gently bringing the attention and awareness back to the area behind your eyes. And gently and softly coming back into the room. How did that feel?
That was great. I feel like I was in another universe.
You were. You were in another. It's very powerful. So what I did there, it's a 4-step process that I take people through, but essentially step 1 is presence your body in the room, focus on your breath. If you find yourself, this is a great tool for people if you're in reaction. So if you're feeling stressed, or stop and breathe, just stop and breathe. Your breath is honestly such a blessing, because in that moment, you just go from sympathetic overdrive to right into parasympathetic. So bring the breath, especially into the belly. It's called diaphragmatic breathing. That's phase 1. Step 2 is allow yourself to feel what you feel, right? We talked about allowing the feelings to process. So if you're going through something where someone just died, a patient, okay, so you're in reaction, you bring yourself to the breath and you allow yourself to feel the grief, the sadness, the pain, the whatever. And you allow it, and you might experience emotions come through it, people that cry through that. And then you ask yourself, what's getting activated for me here? So for some people, it's like, I have no control, or I'm not safe, or I'm not good enough, or I did something wrong, or whatever that core, it's called an imprint. It's, that's a whole other thing, but it's that kind of core thing that you have about yourself. Okay. Yeah. And then you would and then you'd move into step 4, which is the affirmation, like a higher vibration. It's a statement of fact that will then place in your subconscious mind to start to look for evidence to support that you're safe, that you're whole, perfect, and complete, that you're exactly where you're supposed to be in this moment, that everything's working out for you. And what it does is it moves people from what I call reaction to discernment. So reaction is fear-based. Discernment is where your conscious mind, your frontal lobe, can start to make some good choices. You can start to choose consciously as opposed to from reaction. This is like so fundamental for people, because it goes back to all the way back to the beginning of this interview, which is when you make a choice from reaction and fear, you're propagating more fear. when you move yourself to a place of discernment where you can choose consciously the best right action for you, it's a very different reality.
Yeah.
It's like this. So I take myself through the 4-step process, I don't know, 10 times a day. If I notice myself getting a little bit hijacked by something, I just sit and breathe. It could take 5 seconds, 20 seconds, 5 minutes, whatever you want. I take my clients through it. Like, I teach people how to do this because this is how you can have emotional regulation of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So that you're not going out in the world and just spewing your fear on other people.
Yeah,
reacting and then spewing it on other people. Like fear mongering, So this gives people the power to be able to sit and breathe for a few moments and just notice their breath and notice their body and notice the emotions and choose a higher vibration thought or an affirmation. And I teach this in a workshop. I really teach people how to do this. And it is a skill and it's a mastery of learning how to do it. But it really does, it really changes the neurochemistry in the brain. It really changes the subconscious mind.
Tell me
Not because you did it once. Yeah.
Tell me the 4 steps again. So that it was started with the grounding. That was number 1. What was number 2? Yeah.
Stop and breathe and notice you're in reaction.
Right, that's 1.
So that's really key. So think about that even for a moment, right? Imagine if people just knew that they were in reaction. That would be a miracle in and of itself. Because most people are just walk through life in reaction all the time, but they just think it's the way they are. No, you're in reaction. So stop and notice you're in reaction and breathe the belly. Number 2, allow yourself to feel fully. The full range of emotions, the good, the bad, the ugly, the fear. Give yourself, feel fully. Number 3, scanning the body, notice what you're afraid of most. Like, what's the thought? Notice your thoughts. Like, I can't do this. I'm not safe.
Feel your feelings. And then the next step is be aware of your thoughts.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Like I call it your imprints, but that's a whole other thing. But it is like really notice your reaction. Like, what are you reacting to? It's usually you're reacting to some belief or thought. So notice what your thoughts are, right? Mm-hmm. And then number 4, we choose an affirmation. I mean, you can Google even like some affirmations, but it's usually a higher vibration statement, which starts to shift at the level of the subconscious what you're attending to, right? So if you believe that so focus on the affirmation. You repeat it like a mantra. And I don't know how you felt, Larry, but usually when you start to repeat the mantra, it starts to quell the anxiety. It starts to feel a bit like softer, right?
You feel better. Yeah.
You feel better. Exactly. And if you feel better, what are you likely to do?
Act better. Make better choices. Exactly.
You're using your frontal lobe. You're not using your amygdala. This is key. This is neuroscience. This literally is moving you from reaction, which is your amygdala, to your frontal cortex.
And just your pure emotional part of your brain to
this is your
conscious decision-making part.
Exactly. Because here you can discern. Here you can say, okay, like now I feel more grounded. I'm dealing with this. What's the right action here? But if you do it from a place of pure emotion reaction, you're likely going to take the wrong action. So that's the 4-step process. Okay.
I love this stuff. You're so good at this. You're so good at this. You're a master.
Thank you
for sharing this with everybody. I think this is
my pleasure.
This is such a gift. I think we're so lucky to have heard you really open that up and drop that knowledge on us. Okay, I have a couple quick questions before we go. I don't want to keep you too long. This has been you've been so great to give us all of your time.
Yeah, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So will you recommend some books? First of all, have you written a book?
No, I haven't written a book yet.
You need to write a book. I would so buy it and read it and love it. You need to write a book.
I know that's on my list of things to do. I do want to write a book.
I want to encourage that. Okay, one book you said was As a Man Thinketh, James Allen. Can you give me a couple that just exactly what you were talking about that's like more of this? Point us in that direction.
Yeah, let me just take a look here because I wasn't prepared for that, but I have so many. I mean, okay, yes. Oh.
Now you can give us 5. You cannot give us 6 or more.
Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. My favorite author in the world is a guy named Dr. David Hawkins.
Oh my God, I've listened to that whole thing. It's so long, and Power versus Force. I've read that book.
Yeah, so he's written Power versus Force, Transcending the Levels of the Consciousness, Letting Go. So everything I talked about is like that scale of emotions. That's all based on Hawkins' work. So he's a PhD and an MD. So it's all very science-based. It's all quantum physics. Like I'm a quantum physics junkie. So everything and anything written by Dr. Hawkins is absolutely.
David Hawkins, including
Yeah.
Power versus Force. Okay, good.
Yeah. Okay, my second favorite person in the world is Dr. Joe Dispenza, Becoming Supernatural. Please buy this book. It's so cool. He's a scientist too, so everything is all based on neuroimaging and neurophysiology, neurobiology.
What is the book called? I've heard of him. I'm not terribly familiar.
Becoming Supernatural.
Okay. And what is that one about?
Well, he takes you through essentially he talks about our work is not dissimilar, him and I, but he goes a lot more into showing people how their thoughts and their emotions actually affect their physiology, and why people store keep getting sick, and a lot of their identity is in the past and how we've programmed our body to be in the past.
Yeah.
So he brings a lot of quantum science into it. You got to read it. It's all about like how people heal themselves from like cancer and everything else just based on thought alone. And it's all like brain imaging and stuff. So he really takes you through
that you can heal yourself from cancer by thought. I would
Well-
challenge that. But
well, you should read it because you might challenge it.
I like the idea that certainly you can become healthier with your state of mind.
Yeah.
For
So
sure.
So
okay, Joe Dispenza, David Hawkins. Give me a couple
Yeah.
more, and then I'll.
Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many people here that I absolutely love. Well, this is a really good one. These are ones like personal development ones. This is the power of positive thinking. So this book is what got
Can I see
Nelson.
it? Hold it up and Norman Vincent Peale, The Power of Positive Thinking. Okay.
So this book was a book that I think Dr. King was it Nelson Mandela read when he was in prison, and it basically changed his entire life. Okay, so these are some of these books that were written like hundreds of years ago. That
I love the old stuff,
like Think and Grow Rich and like The Power of
Yes.
Positive Thinking. So
Yeah.
these are ones that like are in our archive. So that's an amazing one. So you a must read. What else? The Surrender Experiment. I love everything Michael Singer. Have you heard of Michael Singer?
Yeah,
The Untethered Soul.
Yes, and I did one of his
Courses.
Yeah, one of his courses. Yeah, The Untethered Soul is great.
So this is really one of my favorite books, The Surrender Experiment.
Okay.
This is a true story. This is his true story.
Okay.
Okay. So, and then Joseph Campbell. I mean, I'm obsessed with Joseph Campbell, The Hero's Journey. Have you ever read that?
These are great. I know.
Oh my gosh. These are just iconic books. Like, our book is, and then we have oh my God, Conversations with God. Have you read that?
Neil
Donald Walsh.
Yeah. I read that 20 years ago.
So this is, one of our Bibles here.
I think you're running out of books.
So
I told you not 6.
Okay, that's it. That's all I got. Those are my favorites. They're in the front line of our bookshelf here. So Joseph Campbell, Dr. Joe Dispenza. I think you'd really like Dr. Joe's work. I mean, it's definitely mystical. It's definitely metaphysical.
Yeah.
But I think there's a lot of science in it, and I think there's a lot of stuff from it that you can pull that's really good. And then everything David R. Hawkins is like a must read.
This was so good. Can we do this again sometime?
I'm here. I mean, where am I going? So yes.
Where are either of us going? Well, I'm trying to get some regulars to come back to the show and like help people get through this time. That's what this is about. And I think what you did today was so helpful, and
Thank you.
to get people out of kind of a victim cycle, which is easy to fall into during Corona time, and put in some healthier, empowering, resourceful beliefs and go from there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
My pleasure. It's my total honor and pleasure. This is my work in the world, and I'm happy to share it. And it's such a blessing. And I really see the impact that this is having. Like, if we could all take personal agency of ourselves, like, I think the world would be a very different place, but that's a whole other conversation. I'm happy to be back, and I really love this. So thank you.
Tell people once again where they can find you. Adele Wellness, Adele_Wellness on the gram. And then
Adele underscore wellness on the gram, Adele Wellness. You can actually, my website is also Adele Wellness, so you can find me at adelewellness.com. And then my email's Adele@Adele Wellness. So it's all really the same.
Adele Tevlin. It was great.
Yeah, Adele Tevlin is my name.
It was great to see you again. Thank you.
It was great to see you. My pleasure. Thank you. This is really fun. I'm going for a run now.
Are you? Is that what you do? Is that another thing you do for your own?
Oh my gosh. I go out in the woods every morning, and I meditate, and I run or I walk, and then in the afternoon I take myself out to.
I know, I see you in the woods doing your Instagram things. It kind of
my most grounding place is I find some woods and I do that.
Yeah, it feels that way when watching. Yeah. Well, have a good run. Thank you for doing this.
Thank you. My pleasure. Okay, bye.